Welcome back. All right, news of the day video for all you fine people for your Tuesday, November the 7th. So officially through the first week of November. All right, so we'll start off with the Oilers, and apologies, but yeah, the Oilers are kind of topic of discussion. So first off, McDavid has now gone 6 games without a goal. There's no way he's 100%. It's just I can't see it. He has 2 assists in 4 games since returning from injury. And again, that was an injury that was supposed to keep him out for a couple of weeks. He came back in less than a week. And again, what's going on now in Edmonton is very interesting because something has to give, right? So, does Woodcroft end up paying the price here? Remember, Woodcroft's record in the regular season coming into this year was fantastic. So, the idea of Woodcroft suddenly being a bad coach seems kind of odd. But again, you don't fire the coach because he's a bad coach. You fire him because what else do you do? Campbell is sitting at an 873 save percentage, Skinner at an 856. Do you just keep giving Skinner starts? Hope he gets better? Do you go back and forth between Campbell and Skinner? Neither goaltender giving the team what's needed. And again, last night was a good example. They got goaltended in the first period, right? Demko's fantastic, and every time the puck went the other way, it felt like it was going in the Oilers' net. And I'm not saying the defense has been great for the Oilers either. It hasn't. But it feels like everything's going in the wrong direction for a team that really needs to show they've built and are staying a contender so they can keep Draisaitl and McDavid when those contracts are up. Now, McDavid's has got some time left, but Draisaitl's is up, I believe, the summer of 2025, which sounds like it's forever, but it's not this coming summer, it's the year after. So it will be interesting to see what Ken Holland does. I am well aware there are a lot of people who will blame Ken Holland for the mess that the Oilers currently find themselves in. The Jack Campbell contract has not aged well, and this is a team that needs more depth scoring. This is a team that needs better defense. It definitely needs more key saves. And again, this is why people get upset when I say, well, this goaltending hasn't necessarily been good enough. And the answer will be, well, he's playing well about whichever goalie it is. The reality is there are goalies who play well, and then there are goalies who play really, really well and help their team steal games, which is the kind of goaltending the Canucks have been getting so far. So the question in Vancouver is whether or not this is sustainable, this run they've been on. And I talked about that in the video I did last week. Demko's currently 7-2 with a 948 save percentage. That save percentage is a little high, but he's putting up like an Ullmark type start. And last year, of course, with Ullmark, we were like, well, he can't keep this up all year. And then he did. So I'm not going to say Demko can't keep it up all year, as long as the Canucks aren't overplaying him, as long as he stays healthy. I don't see any reason why the Canucks should not be a playoff team, considering some of the rough starts, including by Edmonton, by Calgary. Unexpected rough starts by them. The Jets not looking a lot better than last year either. And so, yeah, there's no reason to think that the Canucks can't end up in a playoff position at the end of this season. But that's the question I throw out to people out there watching. I know there are some Canuck fans getting kind of cocky about the way things are going. Be careful with that. It's still early in the season. We're just a week into November. It can change quickly. And so I'm really hoping it's sustainable. Fingers crossed on that one, but we'll see. So for Toronto, a team that's had its own issues early in the season, the good news is Matthews has been fantastic. He has 13 goals in the first 12 games this year. And, I mean, I had expected him to get back into 50-goal territory, maybe 60. Threatening to end up with 80-plus goals, that's different. I don't know when we'll start the 50 and 50 discussion. It's way too early, but we usually start the discussion too early. By which I mean I start seeing it online, like, can they hit 50 and 50? It's very difficult. Today's NHL, getting 50 goals in 50 games is pretty darn near impossible, but if anybody can do it, I think it's going to be Matthews. That being said, he's 3 ahead of Brock Besser in the goal-scoring category, and points-wise, he's not that far off the Art Ross lead either. So it is quite the bounce-back season we're seeing from Austin Matthews thus far, and it's been entertaining. So apparently Mike Grier met with the San Jose Sharks players yesterday and let them know that some of what he's seeing is unacceptable. My guess is, and again, not being in the room and not having the info, my guess is it's the way they play when they're down. It's the giving up. It's the complete and total lack of anything resembling a plan on the ice, where they're just out of position, they're puck chasing. As the coach screamed and swore when he said it, stop chasing offense. This is a team that if San Jose is going to get this turned around on any level, they're going to have to play much better defensively. They're going to have to play basically a modern version of the neutral zone trap in order to have a chance. They do not have the goal scorers to compete. They're going to have to keep the goals against down so the games stay close. And the last couple of games have not been close. What's interesting is Grier basically saying, I'll make changes if I have to. I'm not sure which player you move. So if Mike Grier comes out tomorrow and says, I'm going to make a deal, I don't know who you move. I don't know where. And I don't know what San Jose would necessarily get back. We're again in a season where with the flat cap being where it is, it's very difficult to make trades. So I don't know what San Jose would do. But, it has been unacceptable. Again, losing games is losing games. It's not necessarily a big deal. It's how you lose those games. And what's disheartening as a fan is when you don't see the effort. Talked about it from a Vancouver perspective. I don't care when the Canucks are losing and when the team is not playing well. What bothers me is when the effort isn't there or they're better than this. And that's really frustrating. So that seems to be the feeling that we're getting with Grier right now, is that he thinks the team should be better than the start they've had. Not saying playoffs, but at any rate, we'll see how far this goes in San Jose. Freddie Anderson. So this came out yesterday too, that he is out indefinitely. It's a blood clotting issue for him. So you can't mess around with that. That's something that definitely needs to be treated. There are treatments out there which can clear that up. And so hopefully that works for him. It's from what I understand with the blood clotting issue, for some, it's easier to have that to resolve it than it is with others. Hopefully with Freddie it gets resolved quickly. Good goaltender, and of course that's why the Carolina Hurricanes have Halak on tryout currently. They have Ronta, they have Kochetkov. That's the good news, and it looks like Halak might be joining that 3-goalie rotation. I guess Carolina really likes having the 3 goalies and having the ability to put one out of those 3 is obviously going to be a healthy scratch, but that's kind of nice. The Rangers, for instance, with Shesterkin being a healthy scratch, we'll talk about that in a moment, and I'll come back to it. So I want to end with this, so I'm going to leave this where it is on the board. I'm going to jump beneath it. Don't worry, I will come back to it. So Jack Hughes is week to week with an upper body injury, and I've seen the discussion of why doesn't the NHL fully divulge injuries? With gambling money being in here, you can't be cagey about injuries and not telling people. I've explained this before. I'll throw this out there again. The NHL started being really vague about injuries because, all right, with Jack Hughes, we suspect it's his shoulder. It's very likely his shoulder. When he comes back into the lineup, teams that know he has a bad shoulder or he's struggled with a shoulder issue will target it. They'll target it in hits. They'll target it with cross-checks. Mark Stone's a good example. Teams know Mark Stone has a bad back, so every time he gets a cross-check in the lower back, that's what they're doing. And it really is one of those things with hockey that it's just reality, that when you know that somebody has a weakness, somebody has an injury they might be fighting, you're far more likely to go out and target it. And I'm old enough to remember when players did. You would see somebody come back from an ankle injury, and next thing you know, they're right back out again with that ankle injury, and it's because somebody on the other team targeted that spot and knew that's where the weakness was. So that's why the National Hockey League got so vague about all this, and they don't want the information being out there on how long somebody's going to be out and what the injury is. So, it's week to week with Hughes. It's likely going to be a couple of weeks or longer. Again, upper body injury, is it likely a shoulder? Yes. Will the team confirm that? No. And I totally get why the team won't confirm it for the reason I just mentioned. Do you really want Jack Hughes to come back in and in that first game back, a team is targeting the shoulder every single time he's on the ice? Because again, that's what we saw in hockey back in the 80s. And there's ways to do it where it's a clean hit, but you know that when you make that hit, you hit the shoulder first. The primary point of contact is where the injury's been. So it's a brutal sport. And teams like to keep all that sort of vague so you don't necessarily know what the injury is when the player returns. As I mentioned, for the Rangers, Shesterkin is out again tonight. So Quick will start against the Wings. DeBang remains as the backup. The Rangers, this is, it's a nice long point streak they've been on. I think they're going for their 8th game with at least a point. And Detroit, who have been up and down since the really fast start, Detroit can send a message if they can beat the New York Rangers tonight. So that should be a very entertaining game. Good news for Sens fans. No, I mean it. I'm serious. Artem Zub is in a regular jersey at practice. He could play for the Ottawa Senators tomorrow. The Sens need to get healthy. They need to figure this out. Again, a very home-heavy schedule to start the season. They need to get some wins. They need to bank some points. Otherwise, what's been already a really rough start to the year could just get worse. So Greg Wyshynski on ESPN writing about the NHL Edge site. And notice something I noticed right away. So I went on there thinking, oh, this would be kind of fun, seeing top skating speeds. Maybe I could put something together on boards and all this. Well, the site does show you who the fastest skaters are. And it does get into the bests. But the NHLPA is apparently not happy about the idea of worsts. And players don't really like the idea of these fancy stats being out there to quantify who is necessarily the worst. I don't talk about that on the channel either. Like, you will never see me say, well, that player sucks in a video. It's just, no. Back in the day when the channel was starting out, maybe, sure. But, if you make it to the National Hockey League, by that virtue, you're not a player who sucks. You may not be as good as other players on your team. You may need more time to develop. There may be whatever issue that's affecting you at the time that's causing you not to play as well as your teammates. But I try to avoid saying that a player sucks or, anything like that. I have complained about players in the past, but I'm also pretty forgiving on that level. A good example would be Tyler Myers in Vancouver. Drove me nuts how many penalties he was taking a few years ago. Doesn't take penalties as regularly now, and with the Canucks' fast start, it's also been noted that Myers is playing pretty well. And I don't like to have that narrative. So you're not going to see lists on my channel of this is the worst player in the league. These are the worst players on each team. I will talk about worst contracts. I feel like you can criticize a contract. It's not necessarily criticizing the player, but the Edge stats. The NHL players want to make sure that the slowest skater is hard to find. So Wyshynski had to go through everybody. Apparently, Travis Boyd has the lowest top skating speed in the NHL. The counter to that I would have is, okay, so let's just say Boyd's the slowest skater. Let's just say he's the slowest skater in the NHL, but Travis Boyd's a smart player. So you have some really, really fast skaters who don't necessarily think the game very well, and you also have slower skaters who think the game very, very well, and so that can make up for a lack of foot speed. So I don't like to get into this guy's slow, and then, look at his stats, so clearly he sucks, when there may be other reasons why the stats around, and not just the skating, are not where you would want them to be. So, at any rate, the NHLPA doesn't like the whole worst players list, so when the NHLPA does their player polls, you'll notice it's always who's the best at, who's your favorite, who's the best, never who's the worst. Which player do you hate the most? Who's the worst player in the league? You won't see that. Which I don't think is a big deal. I'm not aware of other sports wanting to have worse lists either. Which again, for a player, that'd be frustrating, right? You go out there, you're spending your life trying to become a professional hockey league player, and you get there, you reach the big leagues, and then you've got somebody coming, up on the internet with, so he's the worst player in the league. So, anyways, and then the question becomes one of should players just accept that and ignore it, or should that statistic be there? Should it be easier to find? One interesting thing is this is only on the Edge site. If you're looking on the NHL just through standard stats, I can pull up worst save percentage. I can pull up players that don't have goals, bad plus minuses, who are not generating a lot of opportunities. And if you go to the advanced stat sites, it's easy to find which goaltender is not doing well with goals saved above or below expected, and which players are scoring too much and they're going to regress, and which ones aren't scoring enough. And so that should even out. But yeah, the NHL Players Association, not a big fan of worst player lists. And I apologize if people are waiting for one from me, but it's not going to happen. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. If you use the NHL Edge site, again, I've used it. It's interesting, but it doesn't really give me information that I have felt like I can put up on a board yet and say, okay, look at this. This is kind of cool. But again, it's in its infancy, so as time goes by, I would expect it'll get either absorbed by the regular stats page, so you do a mix there, or the regular stats end up getting thrown onto the NHL Edge as well to give you a more complete picture of each player. But let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.